Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Mizrahi and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Australia Post. I'm thrilled to be hosting today's conversation about how to implement sustainable practices in your business. And as you saw in that opening video, we're already working on some great initiatives here at Australia Post to help you deliver a more sustainable future. First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land in which we operate, work and gather, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. If this is the first time you've been involved in an On24 webinar, or if you need a refresher, I'm going to quickly run you through a couple of widgets that you can see at the bottom of your audience console. During our panel discussion, we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions of our panellists, and you can submit those via the Q&A widget. The windows on your screen are also configurable, so if you want to make them larger or smaller, please feel free to do so. And at the end of the session, we'd appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete our feedback survey, which is the second last widget on your console. This should only take a minute to complete once we've all finished up. A recording of today's webinar will be available after the session and we'll send you a copy of this within 24 hours. I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'm conscious that many of you run or work in a small business, and so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us to discuss this very important topic. At Australia's Post, small businesses are one of our largest customer groups who we partner with every day. So we understand how important sustainability is for you and for your business. And the benefits are clear, from attracting and retaining staff to meeting changing customer expectations to future-proofing your business in the long term, all in the face of global warming and declining natural resources. But where do you start? Implementing considered sustainable practices into your business can be absolutely daunting. So to help you navigate the world of sustainability in practice, I'll be joined shortly by Graz van Egmond, the CEO of the Banksia Foundation, to walk you through a very practical 10-step sustainability roadmap that we developed in partnership. Graz and I will then be joined by Mike Smith, who's the founder of Zero Co, and Dean Jones, who's the CEO and co-founder of GlamCorner, for a discussion on how they've successfully navigated the sustainability journey, including their challenges, successes and learnings along the way. Okay, so let's get started. Graz van Egmond is the CEO of the Banksia Foundation. In this role, Graz is focused on ensuring we recognise, celebrate and be motivated by leaders and innovators in the Australian sustainability arena across all industry sectors and communities. Graz, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Susan. And I was sort of hoping we'd be in the one room together, but yeah, I was really excited about that, but that's coming. So, you know, maybe next time we'll be able to sit together. Look, I'm really excited to be presenting to this sector, which is so important to the Australian economy. And I'm coming to you from the country of the Dja Dja Wurrung, Toongaroong and Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung peoples, which is the beautiful area of the Macedon Ranges in Victoria. And I can add, not a bad place to be locked down in.
I'm very jealous that you're in regional Victoria, but we in Melbourne are in our last day of our something like 270 days of lockdown. So we're all pretty excited here too. I want to kick things off today with our a small business sustainability roadmap that I mentioned. So it's a diagram that you can see on your screen now. And this comes from the white paper that Australia Post and Banksia developed together and released earlier this year. The roadmap is designed to give any small business a really easy 10-step guide to implementing a more sustainable business practices. And it's based on the insights that we gathered from surveying and interviewing a collection of small and medium businesses. So, Graz, if it's okay, I thought we could run through those 10 steps. The first step is about adopting a principles-based approach to doing business. But what does that actually mean, Graz?
Well, Susan, what we're saying here is that small and medium businesses can investigate and make that decision to operate in a responsible way. Look, it's about sitting down and working through how, at a minimum, you can address issues and make your positive contribution in terms of, for example, human rights, the environment, labour, anti-corruption as an example. And that can be the starting point for how you can move your business in that positive, sustainable direction.
Right, and over 9,000 businesses globally have taken that sort of principles-based approach by signing up to the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, which is a kind of moral compass that businesses can use to guide their approach. So that takes us to steps 2 and 3 of the roadmap. How can small and medium businesses consider their impacts and prioritise what really matters in terms of sustainability?
Look, our white paper points to something I really love, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. And these SDGs are the global blueprint to put the world on a sustainable path. These are the world's biggest priorities, like good health and well-being, no poverty, preserving life on land, and responsible consumption and production, again, to just name a few. So if you think about what you're doing as a business and identify which goals are aligned to what you do, you can consider your negative and don't forget your positive impacts as a business. And there's a great tool to help you, which is the Sustainable Development Goals Compass. And a link to this is provided in the roadmap. Look, and once you've done what we call mapping against the Sustainable Development Goals in respect to what is most material to your business, it's also helpful to engage your key stakeholders. Look, just ask them to share their views on the sustainability issues that they think you should be addressing. Many businesses do this with a simple survey to their customers, employees and others, and this is a really great help to narrow down what you might like to focus on.
That's super important, Graz, because your stakeholders' views can really help you set your sustainability priorities and your strategy, as well as you might want, as well as what you want to report on and communicate publicly. It's really important to take on their views. So that takes us to step 4 on the roadmap, and that talks about assessing your existing practices. And we've created a simple checklist.
Well, I think, Susan, can you hear me? We're talking about the checklist that we've identified, where you can identify the quick wins. We want quick wins, and the areas for improvement. So it helps you work out whether you've got health and safety standards in place, equal opportunities, diversity in the workplace. Look, it calls out reducing your carbon footprint and other practices you might not have even thought of. Look, it's a really worthwhile thing to do to get that really clear picture. What we're doing now is, look, if you've got a picture of your impacts as a business, the sustainable development goals you've aligned to, and then what your stakeholders think are the most important issues, then of course some of the areas for improvement, you can really start to tell your sustainability story. So step 5, all of you joining us today will be acutely aware of the increasing demand for transparency from your customers. Businesses are constantly being asked the hard questions. Where do you source your products? How much do you pay people in your supply chain? Is your packaging eco-friendly? And the risk of not communicating about your sustainability is that customers will fill in the gaps. Look, either rightly or don't forget, they'll fill them in wrongly. So by setting metrics and tracking progress, you can improve your practices and performance. Look, it might be that you set a target to be carbon neutral or to have zero waste. And it's really something to work towards that you can share with your customers. Don't forget, customers demanding this. And as the old saying goes, what gets measured gets done, and sustainability is no different. Look, I'd love to focus on a Melbourne fashion label called Elk. And Elk does a great job with their transparency report. You should really check it out. Their website clearly shows customers the ethics they follow that drive how they operate their business, including their people, suppliers, and ethical and humane sources of the materials they use. It's really worthwhile to have a look at their website.
Thanks so much, Graz. I do not know what happened from a technical perspective then, but I'm now back and I'm really glad of that because there's so many of you joining us here today. If we'd been in person, I think the equivalent would have been falling on the stage. Or the
you always say I always want to talk too much, Susan, so I'll let you talk a bit now.
Oh, we were saying that, weren't we, beforehand? So thanks so much, Graz. From Australia Post perspective, we've got a number of public-facing targets that we've committed to reduce waste, to reduce our emissions, and to use only sustainable packaging. And these targets that we set a couple of years ago have really focused our efforts as a business right across the business. And so that's really important because the targets and metrics really do drive change. So as a signatory to the Australian Packaging Covenant also, we've committed to a number of targets around packaging by 2025. And that came through really strongly, the idea around packaging in our research. From an Australia Post perspective, one commitment that we've already delivered is ensuring that our range of packaging is 100% recyclable. And I'm really proud that we've achieved that. And we know from the Ecommerce Insights report that among those that shop sustainably, 55% of them say sustainable packaging is a really important factor in their decision making. And so that's really something important that our small business customers need to keep in mind. And that brings us to step 6 on the roadmap. Graz?
And Susan, I just want to congratulate the work you're doing in Australia Post in this area. I know it's not easy, and I've sort of been watching you guys develop this, so I think it's a great initiative and you know, well done. And I think, look, signing the Australian Packaging Covenant means your business makes a public declaration to work collaboratively to achieve common goals. But if it's also about receiving support and learning from what is best practice, they share research and invest in consumer campaigns to educate the public about the most sustainable packaging options.
That's right. And step 7 in the roadmap is around building e-commerce capabilities, which is probably a no-brainer for people in these day and age with the pandemic. And for, you know, we've created very much a new normal for people shopping online. But it's still really an important one for us to be calling out. And for small businesses to take on board to meet the changing customer needs well into the future, because I think we'll, you know, continue this way as lockdowns end. So Australia Post releases regular e-commerce insights reports, and they can help you improve your customers' shopping experiences. So I really encourage you to check them out. They're available at auspost.com.au/e-commerce. Now, I think we're up to steps 8 and 9. Maybe you did a couple in my absence, but here we go. 8 and 9, I believe, so around securing financial security, financial sustainability rather. And in the roadmap, we talk about identifying trusted financial partners and linking in with the Australian government's business website for information, grants and services to support your small business. Graz, I think we're at 10 now. And that's really a super exciting one, which is where the Banksia Awards come into it. So for those of you here that aren't familiar with the Banksia Awards, Graz, could you please share a little bit about them? Why is it important to seek recognition of your sustainability efforts, and what are actually the perks of entering the Banksia Awards?
Oh, Susan, you've got me on my favourite topic now, so you won't be able to shut me up. But look, we need optimism, especially in this day and age. And now more than ever, we need that pat on the back to say, you know, what a good job we're doing. Yeah. We also need leaders, innovators and disruptors to show us the way. This is what the Banksia Awards are all about. We seek out, celebrate and promote. Through our awards and associated programs, we're showing the broader Australian population that we are actively achieving progress towards our 2030 targets. But I'd like to remind everyone that we are competing on the world stage, and we must recognise that we need to be innovative to be competitive in national and global markets. Sustainability is top of mind in so many other countries, and we cannot be left behind. Banksia provides Australia with an insight into how we can be leading in so many areas of global sustainable development. In our 33rd year, yeah, 33 years. I haven't been there all the 33, but, you know, a big part of it, in conducting the awards. And guess what? We're one of the longest running sustainability awards in the world, which is pretty cool. But this year we're seeking entries in 15 categories. So, you know, that's a broad range. Look, the process of entering will enable each applicant to really see how they are progressing against their chosen sustainable development goals, and at the same time seek the reward and recognition that all your hard work has achieved. We're particularly excited in sharing all our amazing finalists and winners' stories with the public through our annual publication, Australia's Sustainability Success Stories, which is available on our website. We're so excited as our biggest increase has been in the small and medium business sector, right? You know, this is the sector that you guys are working in, and we're really going gangbusters in this area. And we're looking forward to seeing what this year brings to light in the sector and sustainability, especially after all the work we've been doing with Australia Post in supporting small and medium business. And thank you again, Susan, for all your support.
Oh, look, Australia Post has been a long-term sponsor of the Banksia Awards, and we're really proud of that partnership, and we love working with you, Graz. And it really sounds like the application process itself can provide real value to our small businesses, because they receive individual feedback from the judges for every applicant, and that's just a huge burden, I suppose, on you and the judges, but it's a really important way for small businesses to grow and become more sustainable. So, Graz, thank you so much for all your insights. And for our viewers, a copy of the 10-step sustainability roadmap and white paper can be downloaded via the click here button on your screen. Now, let's jump to our panel discussion so we can continue the conversation with a couple of Australia Post customers who are well and truly on this journey. So, joining Graz on today's panel, we have Dean Jones and Mike Smith. Hi, guys. Dean, together with his wife Audrey, founded GlamCorner in 2012, and that's an online destination for women to rent designer fashion. Based in Sydney, the company is on a mission to accelerate the transition to a more circular economy and to a circular fashion system. They provide an accessible and sustainable alternative for the fashion community and environment. Welcome, Dean.
Thanks so much, Sue, and hi everybody. It's great to be here.
And our final panellist is Mike Smith, and Mike is a serial entrepreneur and a 3-time founder. He's built businesses in surfing and technology, wine and events, and most recently Zero Co in the zero waste industry. Zero Co is a company that's providing personal care and home cleaning products, minus all the single-use plastic. And I know one of my team members just loves your product. So welcome, Mike.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here, and hello to everyone who's tuned in for this panel discussion.
So thank you both so much for joining us today. It's really great to have you here. So just a reminder for everyone, if you do have a question for Mike, Dean or Graz, please submit them using the Q&A widget, and we've saved some time at the end of the discussion to cover your questions. In the interim, so it's really interesting to me that both businesses have sought to create environmental change, Dean and Mike. Dean, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a bit more about why you actually founded GlamCorner?
Thanks, Sue. Absolutely. And we've had a very interesting journey that started off solving a very simple problem and evolved over time. And I'm really happy to share that with everybody here today. As you said, my wife, Audrey, and I founded GlamCorner almost 10 years ago now, when we realised that the average Australian woman really only wears about 1/3 of what's in her wardrobe. The other 2/3 sort of being this stockpile of items that she had purchased for a single occasion and then never wore it again. And not only did that seem very wasteful to us, it seemed just what was fundamentally a bit of a bad deal for a customer who we thought deserved better. And as we kind of explored that problem a bit more, because Audrey was that quintessential customer, we spoke to friends and family and we asked them if they had this similar problem as well. And turns out it was quite universal. And when we asked people, well, how do you try to solve it now? It turns out many of them a very common response was, well, I kind of share and borrow clothing with my close friends and family. And so that was not a unique, not an unknown behavior to her. And so we realized, wow, that's very interesting. Kind of like how Uber didn't invent ride sharing. You know, people have been carpooling for a long time. Uber had just introduced a platform to allow that behavior to be more easily accessible, really. And so we sought out fundamentally, first and foremost, to solve that simple problem for that customer who we thought deserved a bit better by creating the largest wardrobe in the country. We thought our hypothesis was, well, if we have the largest wardrobe in the country, maybe our customers can come and borrow from us whenever they like. And ideally, that should really start to reduce the amount of clothing that they need in their lives. So that was fundamentally where we started, Sue. But what's interesting is that the further into the fashion industry that Audrey and I got, because we were not from the fashion industry, we actually came from the finance industry. The further into the industry we got, the more we realized there was practices throughout the supply chain that we really didn't like. We actually found, quickly discovered that the global fashion industry is the second most polluting industry on the planet, with a carbon footprint rivaled only by the global oil refining industry. And that was not only shocking to us, we found that really unacceptable. And so as we dug into this further, we actually realized our fashion rental model, or the circular fashion rental model, while no silver bullet, can go a really long way towards reducing that footprint. Because if, say, 20 people can share the same item, that's 19 other times that never needed to be manufactured in the first place. That's a 95% reduction in the footprint required to satisfy the same amount of demand. And so we realized, wow, that's a really interesting, it's a big responsibility, if anything, that we've discovered. And so our mission evolved over time from solving that simple problem from a customer who we thought just deserved better to really doing our part to accelerate the transition to a more circular and more sustainable fashion system. And if you fast forward in that 9 to 10 years, we now have over 130 employees. We rent out thousands of articles of clothing a day coming through our fulfillment center. We clean and preen about 50 to 60 tons of clothing a month, and keeping those items of clothing in circulation. And so really, that mission has evolved over time to really, and now even we're partnering with other big retailers like David Jones, really well-known fashion brands like Camilla, like Spell. We're helping to accelerate their circular fashion journey as well. And so in a nutshell, Sue, that's sort of how we've gotten to where we are today. But, even our own journey, I'm happy to share with everyone on the call, even 10 years in, I feel like we're nowhere near done. It still feels like we're just beginning that journey.
Dean, thank you so much for sharing us a little bit about your background and about the industry. Some of those stats that you just quoted then are really quite shocking. And yeah, we should all be changing our practices. And I know actually between lockdown 5 and 6 in Melbourne, my sister had scheduled her 50th birthday, and I went online. I'd been hearing about your platform, and I went online. It was super easy to select an outfit and order it. But unfortunately, I didn't get to wear it, so she's rescheduled her 50th birthday for after lockdown's end. But it's a great concept, and it was a great way for busy people also to just be able to order something and have it at their homes really quickly. When they don't have the time to shop and so forth. So
thank you, so
lots of benefits there. Absolutely,
and Australia Post has been such a pivotal part of that journey, and I've said it several times to people like yourselves and people like Graz. An important part of our experience is our customer to enable that circular fashion logistics. Every one of our deliveries comes with a prepaid express post return satchel. When our customer's done, she can just put it in the post and it comes right back. In order to enable circular fashion, we've always felt it's not just important to rival the equivalent alternatives, but to convince the end customer to change their habits, we needed to lift the bar. It needed to be a higher quality experience that was more affordable than the alternatives. And Australia Post has been such an important enabler of that. So thank you, Sue, and thank you to the Australia Post team as well.
Oh, look, it's those colleagues of ours in the delivery part of a business that do the hard yards. But I actually was, and I'm not just saying this because I work for Australia Post, but I was actually very thrilled at how quickly it arrived at that point in time. It was a great concept. So all power to you.
Happy to hear it.
Mike, over to you. So Zero Co is reimagining personal care and household cleaning products, utilising plastic that's already found in the ocean. Tell us more about your business model and how you came up with the idea.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. So Zero Co makes a range of personal care and home cleaning products that we deliver direct to Aussie homes and businesses, minus all the single-use plastic. So doing the right thing for the planet is absolutely baked into the heart of our business. Our mission is actually to try and solve the global single-use plastic problem by doing two things. First of all, it's about funding large-scale ocean cleanups, pulling plastic waste out of the ocean and off beaches and finding a new productive use for it, and then creating a completely circular supply chain that stops single-use plastic being made in the first place. So how that works in reality is when you become a Zero Co customer, in your first order, you get sent a set of what we call forever bottles that you keep at your house and refill forever. These are made from plastic pulled out of the ocean and collected off beaches. So every time a customer becomes a member of the Zero Co family, they are funding large-scale ocean cleanups. And since we officially launched in November of last year, we've pulled almost 1 million water bottles worth of plastic out of the ocean. You fill up your forever bottle with a reusable refill pouch. So you fill up the bottle with this, and then you send the pouch back to us in a postage-paid return envelope. We clean and sanitize and then refill the pouch and send it back out to another customer. So the forever bottle deals with ocean plastic waste. The reusable refill pouch deals with stopping single-use plastic in the first place. So that's how our business works.
That's really fascinating. I think, as I said before, one of my team members, Jess, is a big fan of your products. I haven't signed up yet, but it's just amazing. The amount of plastic that's in the ocean today is just really scary. So we'll chat a bit more about that in a second. Graz, we talked earlier today about the Sustainable Development Goals and mapping your business against them. Sometimes the Sustainable Development Goals or the UN Sustainable Development Goals can sound really big and daunting for small businesses. So perhaps you can share a little bit more about why they actually are relevant to small businesses here in Australia. Graz, I don't know if it's me or if you're on mute.
No, I'm on. Sorry.
No, I can hear you now.
Sorry, I have just lost.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Susan. Can you go on to the next question? Because I can't hear you at the moment. So, okay. Sorry.
Excuse the technical issues, everyone. Dean, we'll come back to you. So you've been at the helm of GlamCorner for now nearly a decade. I had no idea that the business was so old, actually. And for those businesses that might just be starting out on their sustainability journey, what advice would you give them?
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, you're right. It has been it's been a heck of a ride, and we're coming next year. So our business was founded in 2012. So 2022 will be 10 years in circular fashion for us, and we're very excited. And our team are already working on a lot of things because it turns out we have a lot to report, and we're very excited to share what that journey has been like. So what would I share for others? There's lots I'd like to share. I think the main thing I'd like to say, first of all, is be brave. Be prepared to be brave and know that changing the way something is being done just implicitly will be incrementally a bit harder than just selling another widget or selling more hamburgers the same way they always were. Be prepared for that. But there's real satisfaction in your mission there. You're really doing something of value for humanity and for civilization. So I'd just say stay the course there, because there will be times where that will be harder than just selling more stuff. And so that's first and foremost. And I think, like Mike has just shown as well, remember that there's huge opportunity actually on your sustainability journey in really making what is fundamentally a better, cooler product. I'll tell you what, Mike, I think I might be signing up. You might have a new customer out of me just this afternoon. I think, it's important to remember in the coming 5, especially 10 years, for businesses like all of us, I would recommend make sustainability the priority for your business, because commercially that's going to be that's going to be very good for your business as well. Whereas once upon a time, it was almost as though being more sustainable or more environmentally friendly could in some way come at a cost to your business. I think it's very clear in recent years that the perception of that is inverting. People are seeing actually, especially right up to big institutional investors like BlackRock, business viability and longevity will be tied to their positive impact. It'll be positively correlated and therefore negatively correlated if they have a negative impact. And I think the oil and gas refining industry will discover that soon enough, and already are. There's some banks who just don't lend to those businesses anymore. That will impact on their prospects in the coming years, unless they find a way to change. And some of them are, which is really great and really inspiring. So I think that's probably what I would share. Just be prepared for it to be a bit harder, but that's the opportunity. Persevering through that. This is coming from someone who's been doing it for 10 years. Had we not built a business that had that implicit longevity, the very bumpy ride we've been on in the last couple of years would have been bumpier. There's things about our business that has made us more durable to be able to ride out difficult times. And all businesses will face those difficult times, no matter what industry they're in. It's inevitable. So building sustainability into your business is like not only commercially better for your business, but it's almost like a form of insurance to make sure your business's longevity will survive into the long term, which is why you're building it, right? For you and your customers.
Thanks so much for those comments. They really resonate with me, being brave and that change is hard. Change doesn't always happen quickly, but it's just so critical when we're talking about the topic of sustainability and, as I mentioned earlier, the limited natural resources and the changing climate that we're all operating in today. Graz, are you with us now? Can I come back to you?
Yep.
Okay, awesome, thanks. So we were talking earlier about the Sustainable Development Goals, and for those of you that aren't familiar with them, they are a set of 17 goals set at a UN level. And sometimes they can be really daunting for businesses, and particularly for small businesses. They can sort of sound vast and a bit sort of beyond them. So Graz, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about why they're actually relevant to small businesses in Australia.
Will do, Susan, and apologies about that. You reckon after a million Zooms I'd get, the mute button and all that, down pat, but I'm still practicing, so I do apologise. But just getting back onto the Sustainable Development Goals, look, they're what I call a cut-through and broadly appealing template that takes in a wide variety of social and environmental aspects that are affecting our growth for people, planet, and let's face it, we need to make a profit. The implementation of this framework creates a really wide variety of benefits. They include cost savings and reductions, improved attraction and retention of talented people, mitigating risk and securing investment, and with the increasing consumer awareness, the likelihood of increasing your market share. So one of the widely known sustainability myths is that SMEs cannot afford to put sustainability on their agenda, and I've heard that so many times. But let's face it, the opposite's true. SMEs cannot afford not to make sustainability their priority, and using the Sustainable Development Goals can be a really great way in engaging stakeholders and staff in the diverse areas that they align to in their work operations and also in their personal life, because, there's a bit of crossover there of what your particular passion is under each of the SDGs, which I really love. So if you look at an SME's exposure to more sustainability-related risks, it's greater than with larger organisations. Primarily, SMEs don't have the cash reserves of larger companies or the influence over the ever more complex supply chains. So ignoring sustainability can prove more costly for SMEs than for larger organisations, and Dean covered a lot of these points. Don't forget that shareholders, staff and customers expect the same commitment to sustainability from all businesses, regardless of their size, and will choose to work with those that factor sustainability into their planning and operations over other businesses. So Susan, we've found through the Banksia Awards that many SMEs are surprised to see how in tune they are already with the SDGs and how small tweaks can make them even better. But really fundamentally, remember, being small can also be an advantage. It often provides more flexibility and the ability to make changes quickly. So SMEs are in a prime position to be able to identify with the key SDGs that will enhance their business performance into the future.
Thanks so much, Graz. So I do have some questions here that have been coming through. One for Mike and Dean from Jenna. So as a small business, how do you personally handle the feelings around not doing it all or not doing enough when being transparent around what you are addressing and tackling? You know, there always seems to be more you can do. So you know, Dean, I might start with you. Do you have thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I think it's a really good question and a fair question. To remember that, you know, everybody has on their sustainability journey, or they're all on their own sustainability journey at different stages and different phases. I think, like Graz says, you know, what gets measured is what actually happens or what changes. I think first and foremost to just have a degree of comfort with that at least first and foremost, it's really important and good to at least acknowledge that something should be tracked a bit better, or that we need to be doing work to track something better. I think that's first and foremost something to help come to terms with, because the reality is for a lot of us, you'll kind of, you know, not necessarily never be done, but there'll always be something more you could be doing better. And you know what? That's a good thing, even for businesses like ourselves. And that sometimes it's okay for those things to take a bit longer. For example, our packaging journey is very similar. You know, we're sending out thousands of pieces of packaging every day and bringing them back. We are still in the process of determining, for example, our return satchels. We were going to move to a compostable satchel until we found with some of our deeper research, some of those compostable satchels had a higher carbon footprint per unit than one made from plastic. And so it's important to be honest with ourselves there and go, if we're really going to do this right, let's do it properly. And sometimes doing things properly and doing them well takes a bit longer. So I think, Gemma, it's a really good question, but to acknowledge that sometimes it might need to take a bit longer to be done right, and that's okay.
Thanks so much, Dean. Yeah, really interesting insights there. And the plastics topic is one that comes up a lot for any sustainability practitioner, but for those of us working in the e-commerce space. Mike, I suspect it comes up a lot for you too. You know, there is a misconception out there that all plastic is bad, but, you know, you've shared with us your Forever bottle and how that is made with recycled plastic content. So how do you tackle comments and criticisms potentially about plastics?
Yeah, it's a super interesting topic, right? One of the things that I always say to people that is the good thing about the single-use plastic problem, if there is anything good about a problem, right, is that there's not really raging debate in the public about this problem. You know, some other environmental issues like climate change, there's still some people out there that refuse to accept the reality of the world that we live in. But I'm yet to meet anyone who is out there on the streets protesting that we should do more single-use plastic, that we should be making more of it, we should be putting more of it in the ocean. So as someone who's kind of made their life mission about trying to solve the single-use plastic problem, it's super heartening for me to know that we are all aligned on the need to solve this problem. But there are lots and lots and lots of different solutions to the plastic problem and to all of the environmental problems that we face. So one of the things I always say to people is you don't have to be an expert in sustainability or in any specific field whatsoever to get into the game and to play your part in trying to solve the problem, because there are multiple solutions and no one has found the silver bullet yet. We're all kind of in this together. We are all fuddling and muddling our way through these half-made solutions, trying to get to the best possible outcome. So for me, it's important just to try and inspire as many people as possible to get into the game, right? To get off your butts, get off your seats, and start working on solutions. Because if we all are doing bits and pieces, together we will come up with a whole range of solutions that will solve these problems that we face.
It's a really important point, not everyone's got all the answers now, but it's a fast evolving area as well. And there's always research every month and that comes out that talks about different types of packaging or different types of sustainable solutions that your business can take up. So it's a continually evolving discipline. From an Australia Post perspective, I just would like to mention that we've been doing a lot around ensuring our packaging is sustainable. All of our packaging, as I mentioned, is 100% recyclable. The far majority of our satchels are made with recycled plastic content too, over 80% recycled plastic content. And we have a really strong partnership and growing partnership with RedCycle, where consumers can take their used satchels and drop it off at a RedCycle bin at supermarkets and at some of our post offices, at least in New South Wales at the moment, and have that recycled and turned into other products again. We're also working, we have some of our packaging range is designed to be reused, so you can turn it inside out and use it again, and we're transitioning that to more of our products in the period ahead.
Susan,
another question.
Sorry,
please,
Susan.
Grace.
Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to, what Mike was saying and what I've been at Banksia for 22 years and I've just seen the various projects that have come in, and sustainability is an ongoing journey. There's never an absolute right end, like everyone's sort of saying, what is the answer? And I think Mike really brought up it's continuous. You might get it right a little bit here and then you push it over this way and that way, but it's evolving, and it's collaborating, and it's working together and getting ideas from each other that push us along the journey. And I think that's really important for small business to understand. You're not going to get it right straight away. It is a bit of a magical mystery tour in some respects, but the journey's really worthwhile, and the projects that I've seen over the years have really proved that you don't get it right the first time, but I'll tell you what, it's really rewarding when you do nail, some of those wins.
And you must see some incredible examples, Graz, having worked with the Banksia Foundation. So in, 33 years that you've worked with them, you must see some incredible examples of what small and medium businesses are doing. Another one for you, Graz, how can older, more established SMEs establish more of a social purpose?
And this is really interesting because there's there's a number of types of different SMEs that we've seen, but it's the millennial SME that's sort of coming in, and sort of Dean and Mike are examples of these, that there's passion about sustainability. They live, they breathe, they understand sustainability, so they come in and they form a small business around it. And then there's the traditional, the older SMEs, the sort of my generation, a little bit older generation, that has sort of, it was all profit when we were at uni, and, you've got to do, and we've sort of been psyched with that. And all of a sudden this thing that's just called sustainability is introduced into our lives. And I've really seen some really cool, people do get a little bit scared, as you say, where do I start with the SDGs? But it's really identifying what is your personal commitment to, and what do you feel about sustainability, whether it's climate change, whether it's waste, whether it's poverty, reducing poverty, the social aspects, the environmental aspects. But start at the things that you are passionate about. Passion is a big driver on this, and what it means to you. And don't be, as I said, once you start on one aspect, then that one relates to the next one and the next one. And then you see, again, I refer to the SDGs because they are interrelated. And once you start one, then that leads you to the next one, to the next one, and to the next one. So my advice to someone that is starting on this road and possibly doesn't have sustainability at the core when you start, it's really having a look at what you think would make, as I mentioned before, those quick wins, and what is a certain passion for you that you can really throw yourself into it, or your staff, are passionate about.
Thanks so much, Grace. Mike, a question for you from Kenneth. As a new starter, how do you identify new products that the market needs?
Yeah, so look, we only officially launched in November of last year, so we're not even 12 months old. It's been a crazy rapid growth trajectory since then. We've actually signed up 43,000 Aussie households to our service in that short amount of time. We've done that by having a pretty broad range of products already. So there's 10 products in our portfolio. All of the staple personal care and home cleaning products, things like shampoo, conditioner, laundry liquid, hand wash, body wash, the things that you use every day in your kitchen, laundry and bathroom. But a big part of our vision is to have an incredibly broad range of products, almost every single product that you will use in your kitchen, laundry and bathroom available through zeroco.com.au, minus all the single-use plastic. So we've actually got 25 products in development at the moment. And for us, it's about having as big an impact as possible on the single-use plastic problem. And there's two ways we do that, right? The first is to inspire as many Aussies as possible to join the Zero Co movement. Our goal is to get to 100,000 households as quickly as we can, and then to have as many products available to those households as possible, so that we can have a massive impact on the single-use plastic problem. So there are a heap of products in development in the Zero Co pipeline. We're working on toothpaste, we're working on skincare, we're working on sunscreen. So in the months ahead, there's going to be a huge amount of noise that we're going to make about some game-changing products we're going to drop into the market.
That's super exciting, and you've done such an incredible job. One of the points on the roadmap we were talking about earlier is building your e-commerce capability, and you've done an incredible job, Zero Co, at communicating with audiences in Australia through social media and other platforms. But 43,000 in such a short amount of time is really impressive. Another one, I'm going to more audience questions, but Dean, this is one from you, from Amanda. I'm going to read it. A big thank you, Dean, for creating my favourite experience and brand. I'm a long-term customer, now monthly subscriber, and I'm getting a delivery today with a shirt that I bought that was previously a rental. I love it. Do you run a stricter than most approach when choosing partners?
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. We do. So we have a sustainable and ethical supply chain policy, particularly when it comes to working with the designer brands that we stock. And so the quick answer is yes, we do. But at the same time, we've never wanted to act like somehow we're the sustainable fashion police, because we also know that if some brands perhaps had any areas of their supply chain that were at risk or perhaps not in alignment with our values, instead of just cutting them off, we've always felt we have an opportunity to maybe help show them what we have learned might be a better way. And so we tend to partner with brands where we've seen that, which is not often, by the way, because as it turns out, most of the bad behavior in the global fashion industry is in the very large, big mass-producing brands. I won't name names, but if you do the research, you'll definitely come across them. What's really fascinating and what we loved about working with so many amazing local Aussie designer brands, all of our customers will know, very proudly as well, local Aussie fashion brands really punch above their weight globally. But you'd be surprised. Many of them are actually relatively small family businesses who are working perhaps with a family business perhaps in China or in India or in Indonesia, where it's even intergenerational. Like their families have been working, they're kind of rag trade families that have been working together for 2, maybe 3 generations now. And what was so interesting is that in that supply chain, because they've in their local communities, they're employing people in their own families, people are so well treated in that supply chain that what we found was so fascinating is that working with smaller local brands meant actually we were working with, and partners, we were working with a lot of people who already shared the values that we had. So the answer is yes, we take it very seriously, and we look into it with every new partner, including amazing big partners like Australia Post, but also along the way acknowledging we're all on our own journey there. And so, Sue, a big shout out as well, I think, for Australia Post, in case anybody didn't know. As Sue mentioned, Australia Post partnership with RedCycle, very impactful. Sue, thank you for that. We give tons of our plastic satchels back to Australia Post, all of them actually, and they get recycled and upcycled. There's another thing at zero cost to us that Australia Post does for us. And thank you so much for that. And it's again, partnering with the right companies and the right brands who share those values is so important. So I think thanks for asking that question. I think it's so important. But also to know that sometimes where you might come across they aren't, there might be an opportunity for you to do some good in working with them, because you might be able to show them a better way they hadn't discovered yet. I don't think it's productive for brands to be ostracized somehow if they're not. I think it's better for all of us if we can work together. Yep.
I think you've touched on some really interesting points there. One about the interconnected relationship of supply chains and how we're connected globally. And if we didn't know that 18 months ago before the pandemic, we've certainly seen it both with COVID and with the impact on supply chains that have been felt by businesses all around the world. Mike, another one from you. This is from Tanya. What is the impact of having products delivered and then the refill pouch returned, and how do you offset that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And look, we did a whole bunch of work with an independent carbon auditing company right at the start of ZeroCo to understand what is the carbon footprint of a circular supply chain. And what we've uncovered is that the carbon footprint of shipping our products direct to Aussie homes and then getting the empty pouches back to us is almost equivalent. It's just par and par with you going to the supermarket and buying equivalent products yourself. And so what we've then gone and done is offset our carbon footprint by 200%. So we're a carbon negative business. So for example, if 100 grams of carbon is produced by shipping a product from our factory to your door and then the pouch back to us, we're purchasing certified offsets for 200 grams of carbon. So it's super important for us to go above and beyond what is expected, of the public in that regard.
That's super interesting, and it would be utterly remiss of me not to mention our Carbon Neutrals delivery program that we have at Australia Post as well. So if you're a consumer and you're sending a parcel to friends and family abroad or around Australia, that's automatically carbon neutral from offsets that have been purchased by Australia Post through our partner Qantas Future Planet. And we're also looking to extend that solution for our contracted customers, and probably many of them here today. So watch this space, or chat with your sales director about it, and we'll be filling you in more in the coming months. Mike, a few questions that are similar things, so I'm going to read it. How do you ensure transparency and accountability through your entire supply chain, from manufacturers, certifications, and how do you ensure ethical practices?
Yeah, that's a great question. And look, one of our core brand values is radical transparency. So we are trying to push the envelope of transparency. If you go to our website, zeroco.com.au, you will see a whole bunch of information that most companies don't publish to the level that we do. We have all of our ingredients listed. We have all of our suppliers listed. We have the product, the price of our product compared to other competitors in the market. You can go and see our carbon footprint calculations. You can go and see the offsets that we're purchasing. So for us, doing the right thing is not just something that we like to talk about because we think it's good for marketing. It's the absolute core of our business. And one of the big learnings that I've had in this journey so far is that the more we push the boundaries of radical transparency, the more open and honest we are with people, the more we share our wins and our losses, and the more honest we are when we get things wrong, because we do get things wrong. We're just a young company. Everyone gets things wrong. We're all people. We're all just trying to work out these solutions. The more honest and transparent we are with people, the more people respond and love us for what we are doing. So we have a whole set of different supply chain partners. The reality is we can't control every single thing that goes on within our supply chain partners' operations. We have a pretty extensive auditing process before we go and work with people. But we realise that it's a journey that we're on, and it's a journey that we are trying to lead our suppliers on as well for them to become more sustainable.
Thanks for sharing a little bit more about that, and I absolutely support that view around transparency. Dean, we have a question for Eloise, from Eloise rather. How has GlamCorner coped with the lockdowns, with the reduced number of events where people need fancier and dressier outfits, kind of like the 50th, my sister's 50th birthday that I touched on?
Oh, of course, Sue. Like like your sister's 50th birthday, we're seeing what our marketing and merchandising team is referring to as revenge socializing. We're actually struggling in terms of capacity to be able to satisfy it all. So there's a bit of a snapback, but it's kind of been a tale of two speeds for us. We offer a one-time rental product for events and occasions and a subscription product. What's been interesting about our subscription box product is many of our customers who subscribe and pay a fixed price per month, kind of like Netflix for your wardrobe, that customer has, especially while working from home, it's never made less sense for her to own all of the clothing in her wardrobe. So suddenly having a box of just a new set of work items arriving every few weeks is really valuable to her, and it's so fascinating. Those customers have regularly been reporting to us that their wardrobes are shrinking because they're no longer hoarding this silo of items that they never wear anymore. So that part of our business was actually surprisingly, and I'm so grateful that it was, quite resilient during lockdowns over the last, let's face it, 18 months. The one-time rental part of our business, as you might imagine, gets hit quite hard because, Sue, like you said, people like yourselves who have a social life where they're going to birthdays, weddings, occasions, school formals, a lot of that was, yes, got hit quite negatively, but if anything, more on pause. Because what's interesting is, especially in the weddings industry, we know a lot of customers who are going to something like 12 weddings over the coming 12 months. A lot of that customer behavior isn't gone completely. It just got moved and compressed. So, it's been a bumpy ride. I know there's many businesses, especially in industries like hospitality and physical retail, they've done it very tough as well. We've been blessed that actually our business was fluid enough and mature enough we could navigate it. So look, thanks for asking the question. Look, we're okay. Our team very much intact, and we're looking forward to taking care of our customers as they resume their social lives. And if I can ask anything, guys, make sure you go out and spend heaps of money with all those cafes and restaurants and retailers who really, let's face it, guys, they took one for the team. So go and spend as much as you can with them while you're going to enjoy your social life, which we know people always will. So as long as that continues to happen, we'll be fine. That's what we're here for.
Well, I promise you I will be going to restaurants and cafes very, very soon. I am utterly sick of my own cooking, but I also know a number of colleagues that had to defer their wedding. Elliot in our media team had to defer his wedding a couple of times, and is probably one of those people that you're referring to there that has lots of weddings coming up. Look, we do have a couple more questions, but I think we might just start to wrap it up. So thank you so much for joining me today, Graz, Dean and Mike. This is such an important conversation, and I really appreciate you all sharing your insights about how small businesses and medium businesses can embed sustainability into their daily practices. I hope for everyone attending today that you found this valuable and that you've learned some new things, as I have, and apologies for the technical hiccups we had a couple of times, but hopefully we'll be able to have these sessions in person again before not too long. Just a reminder that the 10-step sustainability roadmap that we've referenced throughout the day's session can be downloaded in the console, and we'll also pop a link of that in the email that we'll send you after the event with a recorded version of this webinar. Thank you all so much again for your time today. I'd particularly like to thank a couple of my colleagues, Mel Kenter, Jess Patterson, Gemma Beams and Anne-Marie Zorbas for helping in the back end, and I wish you all a terrific day and a happy few weeks ahead with lockdowns behind us. Thank you.
Thank you.